Everyone. Thanks for joining us here today for the interactive practices for remote studio classes, a jewelry design case study. We are experiencing some technical difficulties with our presenter today, and she's not been able to join us in this session. Um, if you want to hold on for just a moment or two as we try to navigate those, we will try to get Wendy in here for the presentation. If not, please feel free to leave this room and go join another one of the sessions that are currently running. We'll just, in the meantime, hold our space here. Feel free to post in the discussion forum. Hi, Haley and Jennifer. And Romaine. All right, looks like we might get the presenter in. We're working something out on the back end of On Air, and we're going to attempt to get Wendy in through the green room and then into the preview. I appreciate your patience and forbearance as we're working through these technical issues. I see somebody has a hand raised. So I see there's some questions. Yes, I'm not necessarily sharing my screen right now. And we're just trying to work to see whether or not we can get Wendy here into the presentation. Oh, I apologize. The sound is cutting out for some of you. So again, for those of you just joining us, I'm Jamie Heron. I'm the SUNY Online Program Manager at the SUNY Center for Professional Development. We're experiencing some technical issues with our presenter today, with Wendy, getting her into the green room and then here onto the main stage. So if you would like to, if you could give us a couple of moments, we can try to get her situated. If not, please feel free to go join another session that is being run here at the same time.
So it looks like some are having some issues with video.
Yeah. If you're experiencing some issues, you can always contact the technical assistance. The link should be up in the top right-hand corner for you. And we'll just hold on for another couple of moments. Fingers crossed. Thank you guys for your patience. I see someone has their hand raised. If you'd like to post in the chat, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Hi, Haley. Yeah, I see we are live, but we're the hosts of the session. We're not the presenters. So we're waiting for Wendy, who is here to speak to us about interactive practices for remote studio classes, to present, and she's not yet available. Oh, awesome. So we were chatting live for you guys. Awesome.
I kind of figured that when I saw the comment about the Wegmans, and I'm thinking to myself, oh dear, I hope we didn't say anything inappropriate.
I'm kind of
no, you weren't supposed to hear that part. We were quiet when the prompt told us to be quiet.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Marge.
Well, I'm glad you all know how I have earrings on in honor of our presenter who's still trying to get here.
It does not look like it's, yes, this is the jewelry session, Haley, but we are having difficulty getting the presenter in She has not been able to. Oh, wait, we might have it. Hang on just a moment.
Yay!
Hi, Wendy. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay, great. So are you going to share your screen?
We're ready to do it.
Okay, so go ahead and click share your screen on the bottom.
Share screen, yes. And I'm going to do this and that. And here we are with the presentation. Sorry.
Great. So I'm going to put that on the screen, and I'm going to just let you go straight into your session. And thank you for your patience and your persistence. We're grateful to have you here.
Thank you
so
so
I'm
much.
going to hand it over to our presenters here for interactive practices for remote learning and studio classes.
Can you see this, everyone?
We do.
All right. So this is a jewelry design case study. I'm Wendy Yothers, and this is Tomoyuko.
Tomoyuki Hirata.
Yes, and we are going to show you how we took a studio class and turned it into a meaningful experience on the remote platform. So the problem was to reimagine teaching and learning in craftsmanship at a distance. Before COVID, studio classes consisted of live demonstrations followed by hours of structured practice. The teaching and learning happened face-to-face. It was interactive with spontaneous explanations and bench-side demonstrations to support the written and spoken content. Additional open studio time was provided for students to work on their projects with the technologists present to help ensure the safe use of the industrial-grade equipment and for manufacturing jewelry. That's how it worked before COVID, but in March of 2020, we had to learn how to fly the plane while we were still building it. That meant no face-to-face instruction, no real-time interaction beyond the two-dimensional computer screen, no access to studio equipment, and no opportunity for students to learn to work with machinery in a state-of-the-art studio. So how do you make it work? We couldn't afford to lose a whole year of our 2-year AAS to COVID. We had to find a way to make the education as robust and maybe even richer than it would be in a normal year in our curriculum. We enhanced the content and created new projects that would be accomplished safely in a dorm room or on a kitchen table. We exploited the remote platform to teach design in a depth not possible in the hustle and bustle of a studio. This case study encompasses how the first 2 semester experiences in our curriculum were handled entirely remotely. JD 174, Jewelry Fabrication 1, and JD 272. So on the right, you can see that's, instead of that lovely studio, this is where people were working on a desk at home. The easy part was rethinking the learning outcomes. For the learning outcomes that were impossible to perform safely at home, we created illustrated lectures and pre-recorded video presentations. Soldering, annealing, ingot making, and all the processes that demand torches and industrial equipment were handled in this way. For the practice-based part of the curriculum, we focused on projects that helped the students synchronize their hand and eye. We drilled down on 3-dimensional design visualization. Theory and practice were joined at the hip in every project and exercise. Well, now we get to the hard part. Like Alice through the looking glass, everything was just beyond our grasp. With the studio off limits, we had to invent a way to teach our students hands-on curriculum with hands-off technology. We failed well, and then we figured it out. At first, we thought that if we sifted out all the information that could be conveyed in lectures online and taught in a PowerPoint format, the students would absorb it. Or if they didn't catch the gist in class, the texts of the lectures were posted on Blackboard for them to revisit at will. That strategy fell flat. Around and listened to the lecture for a few minutes, and then turned off their cameras and disappeared into cyberspace. When that didn't work, we enhanced our step-by-step slide presentations. We live streamed demos for each skill the students needed to learn. They watched, but they had a difficult time understanding how to make their hands do what they saw us do. Everyone missed the studio. The students said they missed calling us over to their table for help. They needed one-on-one practical teaching. More importantly, they needed community. We had to find a way to bring them together. Our experience has taught us that students learn faster and better when they learn on two fronts, from us and from each other. Even before the pandemic, digital was encroaching on handmade. Students were changing. New students were coming to us as the product of education based on annual achievement test scores. They were conditioned to expect a right or a wrong answer, and that doesn't work with art. Filling in the blank was enough. Nuanced problem solving wasn't evidenced in their motor skills or their design development. This disconnect between thinking a thing and making it was difficult to mend in some cases and impossible in others. Attention spans were shorter. When grit was required to fight through a difficulty, some students would turn away saying, "I'm just not good at this." This is very easy to understand. Generations X, Y, and Z have been sitting in front of the computer screens since they were embryos. Very few of them have experience in the studio class. It was becoming harder to get them to understand the value of failing well when there was so much cultural pressure to get an A and move on. Tight academic schedules leave no time to let new skills marinate. And being liked on Facebook is instantly gratifying. Hard-won personal victories are not. As teachers of jewelry fabrication, we noticed all this, but our response was to double down on what we were already doing. It wasn't until the pandemic that we realized smartphones could be a gateway drug to pull students through the screen, like Alice through the looking glass. We changed the strategy from passive to active. We recrafted our approach to exploit the cyber tools our students use all the time. But first, we drafted a list of touch points to help us create a community in our cyber class. The first was to live stream most sessions from the studio to establish a professional atmosphere and to make the students' fingers tingle for tools. And then we had to create projects that bake in design fundamentals with fabricating skills that are needed to create them at the same time. Then we had to teach the how with a why. We had to support every how-to demonstration with explanations of why it works. Understanding how a process has evolved through time provides firm ground for students to stand on when they push the envelope. We incorporated real-time give and take in the problem solvings for each project. We used deadlines to create an undercurrent of urgency. And we remained steadfast until the very last minute. It was like playing chicken. And then we encouraged anyone having difficulty to try again. We needed to teach students to forgive themselves as they learn difficult new tasks. Nobody can really grasp any new knowledge without a struggle. We rewarded resilience. And most importantly, from my standpoint, we forbade self-deprecating remarks. We assuaged dismay with fact-based hope, and we praised project progress to help it take root and become lasting. Okay. Making the cyber class interactive. We devised a multimedia approach using gooseneck tripods and cell phones. The credit for thinking of this goes entirely to Professor Teratoni. He was the first to recognize that without real-time give and take, our lessons would never stick. It was his idea to exploit the fondness of students that they have for their cell phones to create live action studio experience.
On the first day, we showed slide presentation picturing all the tools students need for remote learning in our class. We described what they work for, which one and what needed first, and where to buy them at the most acceptable quality and the best price. One of the items on the list was gooseneck tripod for their smartphone. This is a set I want my students to set like this. Bottom part is a bench pen. Setting up in a home workspace. We taught the student how to create a workspace by clamping bench pen to a table or a window sill And then we showed them how to set up the gooseneck tripod with smartphone, focusing the camera on the bench pin and plugging it into their computer. We set up an identical tripod on our own bench. When they logged in, everyone in the class had a clear, simultaneous connection with us and with each other. The shared experience of watching each other at work helped create a sense of community. This is my workbench, working space, like this. Live streaming from Jewelry Studio was essential. Why? The widescreen gallery array projected beautifully on the whiteboard. And the student could see every demo and hear every explanation. We were surprised at how much more volume they were in the region chat than in the face-to-face class. Live streaming allowed us to see students' work in real time, as clear as in an in-person class. The lecture content and the same pre-recorded demos were presented in class with our narrative, with time for Q&A. All of the written and recorded contents was achieved in the course management system for students to view as often as they choose. This is the image. This is our studio. This is a big whiteboard. And we can see that each student's work, what they are doing. And some students made a mistake and pick up in a couple of students and told them, and we can give them a right instruction. And this is our studio, and the center is a whiteboard. And right side is a small monitor. This is our computer. And below that monitor, this is a workbench. We send a live demonstration to our students. And the red side this is a blackboard. Do you see that inside of the black, in front of that blackboard has a small camera, and we can send something to our student. This is the one of them. And
the jewelers in the audience will recognize this instantly. This is a clear sketch of the proper method of constructing a gypsy setting for a cabochon gem. The surprise, students encouraged each other in the chat box. In a normal session in the studio, they can't view the demonstration and talk to each other about it at the same time. In the chat box, they shared epiphanies, asked questions, and answered them. They watched each other's hands as they worked and saw live streamed responses on their screens, as we repeated demos and fielded questions. This helped to ease their performance anxiety. Students found it easier to forgive their own mistakes when they could see everybody else engaged in the same struggle. This is student work. These are projects and assignments taught interactively using students' smartphones plugged into their computers. Okay. The following images are student work accomplished during the period of remote learning. All of the creative work, sawing, filing, wax carving, and finishing was done at each student's home workspace with our real-time virtual instruction. The part they could not do at home, casting wax models into metal, was sent to local casting firms. The completed wax carvings for rings and flatware were cast, returned as raw castings, and finished by hand by each student.
this is a fast piercing and sewing exercise. This is one of our project assignment to create symmetric pierced design incorporating at least 100 holes. Scale run during metal sewing is a precision and resilience grit, the courage of try again, and visualize a mirror image design and creating an effective intertwining of an active and empty space. These designs were accomplished with a zero saw and drills on the bench pin. The sewing had to be precise. No firing was allowed to turn up a clock line, dimension 2 by 2, 2 inches by 2 inches. This is the sample. I made this. Left side is I designed on the paper, and we have to trace this design to metal sheet. This student had a very difficult time to learn control drilling and sewing techniques. This is the first attempt to photograph with a project. It was handed in 4th grade.
It's an example of resilience. Two interpretations of a symmetric design. Now, as the teachers in the audience know, there's a lot of negotiation and pulling when students have an idea. So if you counted those holes, you wouldn't count 100. But it was a symmetric design, and it was their own interpretation, and we're
This
proud
is a
of.
good design.
Yeah, we were proud of them. These are elegant grills. Remember, the overall image is 2 by 2. So
And
rings.
rings. Running and visualized in the third dimension by carving and wax. And the first semester, this is the JD 174, last 4 semesters. And the first semester, the first ring assignment required precise attention to specified measurement, but allowed complete freedom in design. First ring and other early wax carving assignments were not required to be cast, although many students did just that. And she made a wax model, and that's it. But she sent this wax model to caster, and she can wear it. And the ring gradually became more sculpture, like this. And the bottom part, do you see the bottom part of the ring has a tongue? Ring second semester in JD 272 assignment and design and create a ring, the future gem in a gypsy setting. Learning gold sculptural design, precise attention to create criteria for setting a gem security in gypsy style without trunk or a bezel. Casting in silver, cleaning up with raw casting, filing, sanding, and polishing. Making a tool, setting a tool, and setting the gem with a hammer.
This is a piece of rutilated quartz, and the setting is very sculptural. Creating flatware. The assignment was to design and make a piece of flatware with a cast handle and a blade connected with rivets. So I asked them to design the rivets into the sculpture and place them strategically and aesthetically. And I reminded them that a serving utensil is meant to be useful and handheld. Their pieces had to be designed for use, and it must be aesthetically pleasing, and it needed to tell their story. So we had to create new samples for these new projects. And here's the beginning of mine. That is the blade's been cut out and filed and sawed, and the wax carved handle part that's going to be riveted to it is sitting right next to it. I'm not going to play these videos because we're short on time, but it's they're usually about 15 or 20 seconds, maybe 50 seconds long, of each separate operation. On the left, it's me drilling. On the right, it's me riveting. I didn't mean to do that. So the learning outcome here is making sure that you get the length of the rivet right and then hammer it down. These are a little bit long. This is also a two-sided casting. So here, Aaron, patiently knocking that silver down. So this is what the examples look like when they're finished. My flatware samples are cheese spreaders, and they have a typical 19th century vibe. The ones on the left are solid castings that the blade is fit into a slot and then riveted. The one on the right is the one you saw me just working on. The students made specific utensils to suit their aesthetic and to serve their favorite food. Their designs took flatbread design up a notch. Okay. The figurative handle here is a wax carving in two halves. The images are front, side, and back. The blade is pierced brass riveted in place. Speaking of piercings, look at the eyebrow rings on the image on the left. This assignment called for one cast piece and the student pushed the envelope. Okay, this student paid particular attention to balance. The undulations of the wax carving up at the natural grip of his hands, and the blade is beautifully filed to create an exquisite knife. The one on the far left is a Nutella spreader. The one in the middle is for spreading smears of cream cheese on Brooklyn bagels. And the one on the right is a sandwich spreader that was inspired by a putty knife. This student chose to do some research. They learned to use what they learned in the piercing project to harken back to historic flatware. This piece is called tomato server. The holes are essential. They let the juice drain off before the tomato reaches the plate. The handle's pierced and decorated with a technique called chasing. We taught the students how to make chasing tools as part of their curriculum. The student used chasing tools instead of casting to create the riveted handle. So here's a concept drawing, the wax carving, and the raw casting. This was created during lockdown in the student's apartment in Paris. And this is a finished piece. The design of the blade tells a story. This lizard is zotting a fly. We don't,
Okay,
you're gonna have to
we
give us
have-
more time.
It's okay.
Okay. So we're talking about this wonderful technique. This is Japanese inlay. It's done cold. Here we are. This is Japanese inlay in Professor Taratani's example. This is the tool that we taught the students to make. Okay. This is what the texture looks like when it's created. There we are. And we created these. This is the student work. Go ahead. Do you want to talk about it?
Okay, this is a student's work. This is a very, very sensitive texture pattern. This is a very difficult, even in face-to-face class. But they did, this is a remote class. This is a great job. And also, this one, this is two pieces. That one is she designed a very, very nice design, and they use a texture and said this. This is good, and the last one, this is good. And red one is a very, very nice texture. And right one is a very rough texture, but she tried to do her best.
So, a new door to students' imaginations can be pried open with their texting thumbs. In the past, our teaching practice assumed that students had some kind of studio experience in K through 12. Our assignments were designed to connect with what they'd already learned in a shop class. The trouble is, for the past